The time is now 6:05. I would like to call this meeting of Madawan Aberdeen Regional School District Board of Education to order. The New Jersey Open Publics Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or agreed upon. In accordance with the provision of this act, the Madawan Aberdeen Regional School District Board of Education advertised this meeting on July 10th, 2020 in the Asbury Park Press. This notice was sent to municipal clerks of the Borough of Madawan, Township of Aberdeen, and Madawan Aberdeen Public Library. This notice was also placed on the district website. Additionally, this meeting was originally scheduled for last night. Due to a loss of internet power and capabilities at the district, it was rescheduled until tonight on an emergency basis. And that was advertised on Facebook, on the town sites, as well as best we could through email. With that, can you take roll call, please, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Ahern? Ms. Hascoli?
Here.
Mr. Bringham?
Here.
Ms. Martinez?
Here.
Ms. Martinez? You don't have to.
Here.
Mr. Montone?
Here.
Yes, sir. Ms.
Here.
Ms. Osborne?
Here.
Ms. Whalen?
Here.
Ms. Moore?
Here.
Ms. Friedman?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I do the President's report, we're going to go into executive session. It will be the only executive session we have for the evening. Hopefully this will allow for anybody who hasn't gotten on to get on to the meeting. Be it resolved that a closed session be convened for the purpose of discussing legal and personnel matters. The subject matter of these discussions will be disclosed to the public when the reason for confidentiality subsides. Although the board cannot guarantee it, the length of the executive session is estimated to be approximately 30 minutes, after which the public meeting of the board shall reconvene and proceed with business. Action will take place. Can I have a motion and a second to go into executive session?
Motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're now in executive session. Can I have a motion and a second to return to public session?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And just so we're clear, there are now 2 Zoom meetings that are going on. We have the initial link that was put up on the website. We set up during our slightly longer than expected executive session an overflow link so that we could accommodate people who couldn't get into the initial one. With that, it is our ask that you keep yourselves muted because it creates feedback and it disrupts the reception. And then when it comes time for public comment and questions, we will give each person the opportunity to unmute and ask their questions. Okay? With that being said, what I would like to do first is the President's report. I want to explain exactly why we are doing this meeting tonight as opposed to waiting for everyone to have power, which, as we've heard, that may not happen until, unfortunately, tomorrow, Friday. We're all getting different lines and deadlines and dates and times, so it was very important. We felt that the public, the parents, get as much information as possible, as quickly as possible. To that end, what is on the agenda tonight is approval for a submission to the Department of Education. It is not a complete approval of a plan that's written in stone. It is the submission. Once the submission is approved by this board, assuming that happens, then we can make that submission public. That means that the public from tonight until the next board meeting, which is August 11th at 6 p.m., the public will have been able to read that document and be able to ask questions off of it. Understanding, being a parent, what pressures we are under as parents, working parents, not really fully understanding what's going to happen, it seemed extremely important to be able to get this information out to the public so that they have ample time to review it, ample time to comment on it and ask questions. The email that has been on Facebook, the info or public comments at MARSD.org will still be up for people to submit their comments and questions before the next board meeting. You'll see how we handle that later. So the reason that this was done tonight is because we can videotape it where we could not last night. We did not have internet service as a district, so we do tonight, obviously. So that is why this is being done this way. That's why we didn't wait, because people who are not able to attend tonight because of power issues will be able to have the opportunity to watch the board meeting on the website. It'll be on YouTube website. Additionally, they will have the opportunity before next week to review that submission that would go to the Department of Education. So again, 2020 has shown us that we can't depend on past practice, that we have to continue to reinvent the wheel. And I appreciate everybody's patience and understanding. The whole reason of doing this tonight comes down to truly wanting to be transparent and getting all the information to the public as quickly as possible. So I hope that that maybe explains some things as to why we would do it tonight and we couldn't do it last night. With that, we're going to go a little out of order. We're going to handle some of the simple stuff first, which I know we've received some questions on, and then we're going to do curriculum and instruction agenda after the others. And then Dr. Michael will be presenting on that Department of Education document, which is part of that curriculum and instruction agenda. So we don't have any special services, but we do have a personnel agenda. Mr. Liebman, can you take us through our personnel?
Yes, good evening, everyone. To start the personnel agenda, I would like to do a walking item for the board. We recommend under appointments, extracurricular activities for the 2021 school year, fall athletic activities. This includes head coaches and assistant coaches under athletic activities, hourly activities, and non-athletic activities. Moving on with the regular personnel agenda, Section A, resignations and retirements. We have 2 staff members listed, both for retirement with their effective retirement dates. Section B, leave of absence. The 2021 school year, 1 staff member listed with the effective dates of the leave. Under Section C, appointments, number 1, district sign language interpreter for the hearing impaired for the 2021 school year, 1 staff member listed. Item number 2, district translators for the 2021 school year, staff members listed with their activity and hourly costs. Item number 4 is the HIP report. There are 0 incidents and 0 confirmed incidents. And item B, job descriptions. We recommend to the board the following job descriptions for the 2021 school year. This includes Title I coach coordinator, Title I interventionist, Title I school counselor for culture and climate, and Title I instructional coach. That concludes the personnel agenda.
And can I get a motion and a second to accept the personnel agenda?
I'll motion. I'll second.
Got that? Any comments or questions from the board concerning the personnel agenda? Seeing none, Mr. Ferrera, you want to take us through finance?
Thank you, good evening. Starting off on page 1 of 1 of finance, resolution number 1. This is the renewal with the company that services our phone system. Number 2 is the renewal of Aramark at an increase of 2.7% for the upcoming July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2021 year that we're currently in. And number 3 is a change order that was previously discussed with the board at the last meeting, having to do with the remediation and abatement of the middle school gym floor due to the mercury vapors. And that concludes finance.
Can I get a motion and a second to accept the finance agenda?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Are there any comments or questions regarding the finance agenda from the board? Seeing none.
Do any of these pertain to the finance or the?
Are there any public comments on the 2 agendas that we just reviewed, which were personnel and finance? So we have, Mr. Bringham, did you have any questions or comments concerning the agenda items?
No, I did not.
Okay. And there are a couple of questions that we've seen. Can you read them?
Yes. We have a question from Michelle Lasco. What is the holdup on restarting full sports?
I'm going to answer. Thank you, Ms. Lasco. Practices will resume tomorrow. The coaches will be approved tonight. And initially, we had some COVID-related issues a couple of weeks ago, which was the initial shutdown after we were allowed to resume sports from the state. So sports will resume tomorrow.
The other question is from Mr. Baroka. Does the new approval of Aramark include additional staff?
The answer is yes. It allows us to hire any staff that we may need under the current circumstances.
And finally, Mr. Bond, comment, Mrs. Greenspan will definitely be missed.
And I would wholeheartedly agree with that.
40 years.
She's fantastic, will be sorely missed by the district, but I wish her all the best in her future endeavors. And I have a feeling she'll be back to visit many times. But congrats to Ms. Greenspan, and she's going to be certainly missed quite a bit. Yep.
And if that is it, Mr. Farrar, can you take votes on action items on those 2 agenda?
Yes, so the 2 motions are, and we do it all in one vote, is the personnel agenda with the walk-in as presented by Mr. Liebman and the finance agenda. Ms. Ascoli?
Yes.
Mr. Bringham? Yes, thank you. Ms. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Montone? Mr. Montone?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Osborne?
Yes.
Ms. Whalen?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Friedman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to now move this to Dr. Micah to take care of curriculum and instruction.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I'd like to start by saying thank you to the members of the community, our staff, our board members, and our administration for the amount of work that went in the last 4 weeks to produce our plan for tonight. We were under extremely tight time constraints. People gave of themselves to no end over the last 4 weeks to accomplish what needed to be accomplished. And for that, I'm eternally grateful to everybody that was involved. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. We're going to put up a PowerPoint presentation on the screen. That PowerPoint, along with the complete plan itself, will be posted first thing tomorrow morning. For the public, there will be a community letter that goes out tomorrow as a follow-up to the meeting tonight that will have a survey link to it that will be explained in the letter that will go out tomorrow. Next Tuesday's board meeting, we will be fielding any questions that come out of the document that will be released tomorrow. There will also be a Q&A session next Thursday that will allow for more questions to be asked. What? next Wednesday. I apologize. The specifics of that will also go out in the community letter tomorrow. And let's get started. Alex, if you could go ahead to slide number 4 for me, please. So to begin, self-evident on the first slide is the plan serves to ensure compliance with the New Jersey Department of Education's requirements under the roadback plan. Just to elaborate a bit there, when we were initially given the plan roughly 4 weeks ago, 2 weeks into the plan, another option was introduced, which led us to have to go back and revamp the plan midway through. And that third option is a complete virtual option that will be discussed in the plan itself. This is a living document that will be modified as health circumstances, guidance, and conditions will be switching. As you know, we're in an extremely fluid situation right now with information changing almost on a daily basis. So we will be guided by the state, the New Jersey Department of Ed, CDC guidelines as we proceed and move forward. And the document itself is not intended to answer every question, but provide our framework for this operational protocols that we will be using for the 2021 school year. So the plan itself is broken up into 4 parts as per the BOE guidelines: conditions for learning, leadership and planning, policy and funding, and the continuity of learning. So basically, we broke the plan itself up into those 4 groups, and the committees worked in one of those groups. So under governance, throughout the summer, we had board members, administration staff, parents and nurses, specialists have spent countless hours going through the health, safety, emotional well-being of our students and staff to make sure that we are protecting them. And for the continuity of and advancement of student learning that will occur over the next school year. We are offering parental choice in the instructional format. We will be providing training and support to prepare staff for our hybrid and virtual instruction format. Our committees work diligently to ensure that there will be proper professional development offered, which will be happening. In fact, we essentially moved all of our PD days to the beginning of the school year, which will allow us to go in-depth into teaching in a hybrid or virtual model, as well as be able to provide those social and emotional supports that are going to be needed for both students and staff as we come back into an environment that has changed dramatically over the course of the last 6 months. Under governance, we have to change quite a few of our policies that are in existence. We will be doing a first read and second reads in the month of August, so those policies will be in place for the start of the school year, which will commence for students on September 8th. Under governance, things that were discussed and decisions were made on transportation, food distribution, symptom reporting, PPE requirements, enhanced cleaning protocols, grading, scheduling, and our curriculum based off of a hybrid of virtual instruction, and our professional learning, which is our PD. So under our hybrid plan, under the reopening model, Mondays and Tuesdays in school will be the people that have last names A through K. On Wednesday, we will have a remote instruction day, and then Thursday and Friday, we will have students from L to Z in. One thing I want everyone to understand, we will be working with parents if there are certain circumstances that may necessitate students going into another group, maybe moving from a Thursday, Friday to a Monday, Tuesday. We will work with each individual family on a case-by-case basis to remain as equitable as we can. Under the hybrid in-person and our virtual models, you can see the distinctions that we made in the schedule. 2 days of in-person under a half-a-day schedule, which is a minimum school day instruction, 3 days of remote instruction, and all efforts will be made to ensure that siblings will be assigned the same in-person instruction on virtual days. We're going to continue now. I can say that next week the overflow will be accounted for before the meeting starts, so I apologize for having to stop twice to be able to add. It will be taken care of for next Tuesday's meeting, absolutely. So the schedule, as you can see, the in-person hybrid method will be 2 days of in-person, 3 days of remote, and then the all-virtual school day will be virtual instruction 5 days a week. The next few slides, I'm not going to go over line by line. These are the areas of operations that needed to be covered under the DOE guidelines. As I said, this will be posted first thing in the morning, as well as the complete plan, which you'll be able to go in depth, be able to read, and then be able to formulate questions from the reading. Yeah. All right, right there. All right. Policies and procedures, specifically, under the CDC guidelines currently, parents and guardians will be responsible for screening students prior to their arrival for symptoms and a history of exposure. We will be creating a document that can be filled out and then automatically will come to us prior to the start of school every day. We will have isolation areas for students and staff if someone is exhibiting exposure symptoms during the school day. Contact tracing will be done in conjunction with the local health departments, and we will have established written protocols for positive cases. Part of our policy changes, there will be a readmittance policy that will be added specifically over the course of the next 2 weeks prior to school starting on September 8th. There will also be guidelines for nurse visits that are dealt with in the plan itself. Under the health section, we will be increasing training on personal protective measures. That will be required, and we will be covering that during our PD days, the first few days of school. As we spoke about before, there is going to be a quarantine space separate from the nurse's office. We are finalizing those rooms over the course of the next few days. There are supply chain concerns with the availability of supplies for disinfectant and PPE equipment. Thankfully, right now, the purchase orders that have gone out, we've already received some of these materials, and we anticipate a lot more coming in over the course of the next couple of weeks, and we will be able to ensure that we have enough of our disinfectant and personal protective equipment prior to the year starting. Student, employee, and visitor contact tracing requirements will be conducted by the local health department. Under the special ed section of the document, IEPs of all students will be fulfilled as required by the administrative code. Our goal is to maximize in-person instruction to the fullest extent possible based upon parental selection. So we will be doing everything we can as far as the state will let us and as far as whatever option parents choose. We will also be having counseling and support services will continue to be provided such as for students with IEP. So to give you an example, we were allowed to open up our ESY program for the summer, which we're doing here at Cambridge Park, and we have been able to work on our protocols with the arrival of students every morning, and we have been able to push out our related services and counseling supports through that. So it's giving us a pretty good idea of how that would flow during the school year. Services will be met either in person or virtually as it stands today. Specifically dealing with school cleaning, we will have, and all of these things, like I said, will be discussed specifically in the plan. Once you get it in the morning, you'll be able to get into the specifics of each of the things that we're discussing tonight. There's going to be increased cleaning during the school day in common areas and those high volume areas such as hallways, bathrooms, doorknobs, etc. Those high target touch areas, as we spoke about. Deep cleanings will take place after school every day and on Wednesdays, and we have already arrived electric static sprayers and air scrubbers. We already have gotten our first shipments of those, and we have enough of a supply to start the year. And the maintenance of an adequate supply of PPEs and cleaning materials, like we discussed before, like I said, we already have amassed numerous cleaning supplies and PPEs such as face masks, gloves, hand sanitizer, which will enable us to be able to start the school year with enough supplies.
What is the electrostatic sprayer?
When we finish on the so building safety measures, reduce student capacity via the hybrid model. Hand sanitizer stations will be available in every classroom and in the hallways. We will be staggering the cohorts released from the classrooms and actually arrival at the school day every morning. And we are following the DOE and CDC guidelines on everything we're doing from a health and safety standpoint. Our safety protocols, as we spoke about before, there will be a daily health screening questionnaire that will be completed at home by the parent or guardian. Daily temperature checks that would be completed at home according to the most recent CDC guidelines that were released last week. Face coverings will be required as by state mandate. That includes at the bus stops and on buses as well. And that the face mask, the face covering requirement applies to every person, student, staff member, everyone coming into the building will have to abide by the state mandate or they will not be allowed to come into the school. However, on a case-by-case basis, those students or staff members that have concerns or other issues regarding that will be looked at in a case-by-case basis. And if you are a parent and have concerns about it with your child, I would ask that you reach out to your building principal to start that ball rolling. And if there are staff members with the same concerns, they should reach out to our personnel department sooner rather than later so we can sort that all out before this school year begins. So some of the mental health supports that we will have in place for the start of school in September, we are going to be having professional development on adverse child experiences training, trauma-informed professional development, social and emotional learning supports such as morning meetings and mindfulness. Our MARSD Parent University sessions will focus on social and emotional learning. We will offer staff wellness opportunities. We will be going through mental health first aid training. We will be looking at the Lifelines curriculum for intervention, postvention, and prevention. We will be working, as we have for the last 4 years, with effective school solutions, and we will be continuing to offer our YMCA counseling. Transportation. Transportation is considered for those who have not opted out. There'll be specifics tomorrow in our community letter dealing with transportation, which once we get the results of that survey, we'll have a better idea of how many people are looking for transportation. However, we understand that parents may, those students that are mandated by state law to be transported, some of those parents may opt out, or if they're going for a virtual option, will not need transportation. So once we get back that survey next week, we'll be able to make some final decisions on transportation. However, as I stated before, masks will be mandatory on the school bus at all times. Lunches, as it stands right now, will be delivered to the classrooms as students leave for the day. They will be grab and go. We're working on a system right now where you can pre-order up to 2 weeks in advance, 1 to 2 weeks in advance. That'll be worked out over the next 10 days as well. So you won't have to go on every night and order your lunch for the next day. You could do it in bulk over a 2-week period, and that will allow us the ability to get them delivered to the classrooms for grab and go when they're being dismissed for the day. Also, we will be offering our food distribution like we did for the end of last year as well. So we'll have 2 programs going on simultaneously. Those students that will be in school that opt in will be taking a grab and go, and those students that are completely virtual, we will have food distribution set up, and the details of that will follow, like I said, also over the course of the next week. This is an example of what the hybrid learning model will look like. As I said, when you have the opportunity to digest the whole document over the next few days, any questions that you have will be fielded and answered. So once you get the document tomorrow, please spend a lot of time on the hybrid learning model itself, and we will be available to answer any questions that will naturally flow from a reading of the document. Back to transportation, like I said, face coverings will be required at all times. We will be increasing our disinfecting of school bus surfaces. So just to give you an example, we'll be disinfecting all throughout the whole day. So those electrostatic sprayers that I discussed before, which specifically are handheld devices that are charged electronically, and when the disinfectant is released, it helps it bond to the surfaces to give a deeper cleaning. So those will be available in every school. So once a drop-off is made, the buses will be sprayed. It will be given the time allotted to sit on the surface, and then those buses will not go back out until that's completed after every single run. And then, of course, at the end of the day, that will be repeated on the bus once it gets back to the yard at night. As it stands right now, field trip and athletic transport is going to be something that's looked at in the next couple of days. As it regards to sports, we're waiting on the state as we go forward as to what can and cannot happen, and we will follow those guidelines as well. Technology, we are continuing to enhance our infrastructure to service effectively our teaching and learning and operational needs. So for instance, when we went on remote learning last March, literally overnight, within a few days we were able to get everyone devices and everyone Wi-Fi. So for those students that don't have access, we will be continuing to provide that access through our internet support. So I'm very happy to say that we have the ability to allow our students, each one of our students, a Chromebook to take home and Wi-Fi access if necessary. As it stands right now, we did not collect our Chromebooks. We are not going to collect the Chromebooks back, and there'll be another needs assessment. So if you're listening now and still have a need for technology prior to the year starting, I assure you that we will get it to you in a timely fashion before school starts. So I don't want anyone to be anxious about not having a Chromebook or access to Wi-Fi. That will all be provided if it is still necessary. We continue to evaluate our digital curriculum tools and usage, and we're identifying gaps and opportunities to improve the online learning structure. We are developing plans for transitioning into distant learning as necessary. Our building routine using a one-to-one device and blended learning within the daily instruction at all grade levels. Full-day instruction for specialized populations, in-person hybrid method, staff ed, our special ed population, which is our autistic, our multiply disabled, our learning disabled, our cognitively impaired, and our behavioral disabilities. Also included in that are ESL students and our homeless students, as well as those students that are placed in our Monmouth County vocational schools. And they will receive a full day instruction. Is that the last slide? And as we spoke about earlier, the save the date is for next Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. It's going to take place in the high school auditorium. As it stands right now, the only live audience will be the first 25 people that respond due to the current executive order by the governor that has pushed back down the amount of people that can be indoors at once. So it will be the first 25 people that log in. However, It will be YouTube Live, and I will assure you as well, we will provide for the overflow so we don't have to stop numerous times during the presentation to allow for more registrants. So if you don't have the ability to come that night and you're not one of those 25 people, it will be live streamed and you will be allowed to, you will have the opportunity to ask any questions that you want. So, no. So now we have to go into the regular curriculum, so John would take care of that.
Mr. Bombardier, can you review the other portions of the curriculum agenda?
Good evening. Under Part A, travel, we have 8 staff members attending the distance learning exchanging online social studies instruction. We have 1 staff member attending the New Jersey Interscholastic Athletic Association Policy, Procedure, and Eligibility Workshop. Part B of curriculum instruction, we have 1 staff member. Part B, we are recommending that the board approve the submittal of the Matawan Aberdeen Regional School District's reopening plan. Item number 2 is we are recommending that the Matawan Aberdeen Regional School District Board of Education approve the district participation in Special Olympics New Jersey, Unified Champion Schools, an inclusive program for students with and without disabilities. The SONJ will provide up to $10,000 for the ESY 2020 and additional resources to be utilized for the 2020-21 school year. Item number 3, we're asking the Board of Education to approve the following staff members for their participation and compensation in the virtual Horton Gillingham teacher training that took place on the dates indicated below. Rationale and cost as indicated. Item number 4, we're asking the Board of Education to approve the following staff members for their participation and compensation in the virtual Linda Moon Bell visualizing and verbalizing program training on the dates indicated. And that's all for curriculum instruction.
Can I have a motion and a second to accept the curriculum and instruction agenda?
I'll motion. I'll second.
Questions and comments from the board, and again, what we are approving is for the plan is just presented to go to the Department of Education and to be published to the public. It is a living, breathing document, so as things change, it will change, as public comment is taken into consideration. All of those things are still addressable for the next meeting, but this does allow the public to view the document tomorrow as it is posted. So just to be very clear as to what it is that is triggered by our approval tonight. With that, are there any questions or comments from board members? And do we have board members virtually?
I just have a quick.
Mr. Montone, do you have any questions or comments on curriculum and instruction?
No, I don't.
Okay. Ms. Whalen, you have questions. Just speak up.
Mr. Bombardier, just if you could explain the Orton Gillingham and Linda Mood Bell programs for people that might not know the benefit of them, because obviously they're definitely going to be very useful during the virtual learning and the school year. So just so people could get a feel of, you know, how they work.
Sure. The Orton Gillingham and Linda Moon Bell are specialized literacy training programs that focus on phonics, phonemic awareness. In the case of Linda Moon Bell, it focuses on specific comprehension strategies. So these are targeted professional development that will give teachers tools and strategies to use with specialized populations to support varied forms of literacy intervention.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from board members? Mrs. Coley?
I just have one, and I think logistically, it will probably come out as we develop the plans more and get into the specifics, but in terms of the screening before the children get into the school, just making sure, I think it's important to really work out how do we make sure students don't enter the school that maybe do have a fever, or, you know,
Absolutely.
if there's a checkpoint or something.
There's going to be a checkpoint set up, so, and also if the questionnaire is not answered, the student's not going to be able to get into school as well. So that'll all be in real time, so that's going to be the responsibility of the administration to ensure that that's being done every single day consistently, and we are maintaining the records that go along with that. So That's what we'll be working out over the next week with IT, so we can ensure that that takes place.
So before they even enter the building?
Right. Yeah.
So they won't be in the classroom and then it's
No.
like, oops, we didn't get a.
No. Yep.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for any other board members concerning curriculum and instruction? And I do have one as well for, just to be clear, if my child is in person for a half day, they would be dismissed with their lunch and then they would log in the afternoon. So they would still receive that full day instruction. And then conversely, the same people on Thursday, Friday, again, would have that full day, half in person, half. And just in case nobody can hear that, Mr. Bombardier is acknowledging yes. I understand that there's an echo. There are 3 computers with 3 mics, so everybody has a slightly different view of this room. I apologize for that. Okay, so are there any other questions from board members? So as the public is aware, or may not be aware, there was an email address that was posted that allowed for the public to post messages or questions or comments that would be answered as part of the public portion here. So this would be the time for public comments and questions. I'm going to go read the questions, who they're from. If there is personal information, for example, a child's name or a personal story regarding a child, in the interest of keeping that information private and ensuring the privacy rights of that child, that has been redacted. For those people who things have been redacted from, I will acknowledge that, but we do have the full copy of the email that will be maintained as part of the record of this meeting.
If I could just add, once we go through the questions that have already been emailed, we'll then go into the chat room and answer each one of those questions one at a time as well.
And I do realize that there are additional questions that are coming up through that public comments email, so we'll get to those as well. I have about 12 pages of questions. So the first question I have is from Michelle Lasco. Reading it, there have been portions of this that have been removed due to ensuring privacy rights of the child. It is my hope that the class of 2021 can graduate as a whole. Will you be looking for different venues to accommodate that if guidelines expand, yet still help with social distancing? Question mark. A venue such as P&C could be a good option. That's the first part.
I'll take over after you. So to answer that, the answer is yes. So whatever we can do under the executive orders or state NJ DOE guidelines, we're going to do. So in the past, we've been using Brookdale as a venue. So certainly if the opportunity to allow us to have a larger crowd, we would absolutely do that. So this year, under the circumstances, we had to switch it up to the high school and do 2 different ceremonies to be able to accommodate the social distancing that was required at that time. So yes, absolutely, we want to try to do it with everybody together, and that is our hope, and I'm hoping that we'll be allowed to do that after the passage of this school year.
Second part of that email, will a face shield be an acceptable form of a mask? Part of this has been redacted to ensure privacy. The concern is any sort of skin disorders or anything that might be contagious, especially in the heat.
So, as I stated before, there is a state mandate for face coverings to be worn at all times. However, there could be medical issues related to that. As I said, we will deal with those on a case-by-case basis. If you have concerns about one of your children, as I said, I'd ask that you reach out to the building principal so we can get that ball rolling sooner rather than later. And if you are a staff member that has concerns, I would say please reach out to Personnel Human Resources as soon as possible to get that ball rolling as well.
And in the event somebody is absent for a reason, and they would have to stay home, how would that affect their attendance?
So absences will be dealt with as they normally are, if it's for an extended period of time, and a doctor's note will be required, the same reporting requirements will stand.
And that, the last part of the question addressed sick days as well. The next question was emailed by Jennifer. I'm going to spell the last name, Abeywardena. This has a couple of parts to it. If students are in classes and virtual 2 days, how will all of the students be offered equal educational experience?
I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Bombardier.
So through the work of our committees and the curriculum instruction department, as well as in conjunction with special services, our curriculum will be provided to each of our teachers. We will prioritize the standards that we'll be focused on for instruction, and we will be utilizing our benchmark as well as our diagnostic tools such as iReady to diagnose and provide students with instruction that's tailored to meet their needs. However, the standards and the curriculum that's taught across the grade levels will continue to be consistent, so we can ensure that the same level of skills and standards will be introduced. However, there will be an opportunity for teachers to differentiate based on the individual diagnostic assessments that the district will utilize.
Okay. I wanted to also add, which is not really part of the answer, but certainly worthy of mentioning. I read an article today where this district was number 23 in the state on providing equity to students. So I think that's really important to acknowledge when we talk about the attention and the care and love that we give to ensure equity among students. If you can't see me, I'm now speaking off camera. Okay. So continuing on with Jennifer's question, will they be the students attending a live stream on their virtual days, understanding that some may need more explanation than other? All students should have same access to teachers. I'm not sure if that was encompassed in that answer.
The second one about
Yes.
live stream?
Yeah.
So right now we are still working through the delivery of live stream instruction and what that would look like in terms of the specific courses and content, whether that's in person or hybrid. So more specifics will follow as the building principals are finalizing the instructional methods for both the hybrid and the in-person and the fully hybrid model.
The next portion of that question, if only half of the students attending are in school, why is it necessary to have 4-hour sessions? In limiting the day, aren't we also limiting the level of education the students are receiving?
So although the minimum school day in person is 4 hours, the expectation is our teachers will be in school 5 days a week, full day, and the expectation is our students will also be engaging in learning throughout the day. So although they will be in person for the 4-hour minimum school day, once they return home, they eat their lunch, they will be provided with continued instruction. In some cases, that will be special areas or electives. In other cases, that will be small group instruction, whether that's meeting with the teacher using a Google Meet, individualized instruction, and teacher contact time.
In those 4 hours, are the upper schools, which I believe are referring to the high school and MAMs, attending 8 periods or just 4?
The schedule is going to look a little bit different, so they will be getting all of their courses within their school day. However, it will not be necessarily that all of their courses will be completed in those 4 hours. We are looking at to prioritize the core content in the morning time at some of the schools, and then once again, electives and specials could be taking place in the afternoon. That is part of the scheduling that is currently being finalized.
How are hands-on classes, science labs, art and music classes being addressed in the virtual environment?
So we are we have a number of online programs, gizmos, and online simulations that allow students to engage in that content. Although nothing can replace being physically in the classroom, our teachers are extremely creative, and through the continued professional development and collaboration, and through the online software, we will engage students to the best that we can in a virtual setting using these online tools, instructional simulations, and small group instruction through that Google Meet process.
And next part of that is, given the inconsistency or the difference in way teachers conducted virtual instruction this past spring, what guidelines are being established for teachers and how will participation be, I assume that's a typo, evaluated?
Right, so we have a number of different ways that we will evaluate participation. That will be through the completion of online assignments that will be submitted. The teachers will be provided with ongoing professional development to make the lessons as interactive as possible through the use of Google Apps for Education, Google Slideshows, where they can produce documents, share that document back with the teacher, get that feedback. That will be one method. We are looking once again through the online platforms to have those programs pushed out to the students. And the guidelines will be consistency. So consistency in the curriculum that's taught, in the programs that will be utilized, and that's all part of the planning process that's taking place currently.
And what is the time frame for evaluation of this plan?
So the time frame is a time frame that's in real time. It's going to be constantly evaluated as we go through. So as we explained from the onset, this is not a plan that is carved into stone. This is a plan that is going to be fluid and may change on the fly, often based on the current set of circumstances that exist at any given moment. So the plan itself will be continuously evaluated and looked at, and where we can make improvements or change on the fly, we're going to do that. So this is something that's going to be constantly evaluated on a daily basis so we can ensure that we are doing the best job that we can for our students.
The next set of questions was submitted by Linda Valenza, V-A-L-E-N-Z-A. How will remote high school students receive instruction in each of their classes, i.e. Google Meet, Zoom, etc.?
So Google Meet, as we did in the phase 2 of virtual learning, Google Meet is a platform that will allow teachers to meet with the whole class as well as meet with small groups of students for small group instruction, math instruction, reading instruction, core content areas. They will utilize Google Meet as well for morning meetings, so it's a way to connect with those students in an interactive platform. So that will be continued as we go into our hybrid learning environment in the fall.
If a teacher experiences, this same person, part of their email, if a teacher experiences technology issues during class, how will they ensure that the remote high school students are receiving the necessary instruction?
So we do have, we've established a district technology team, and we also have established what we call tech leads in each school. We also have media specialists in each school. So through those individuals and through the training, our goal is to ensure that we minimize any tech issues. Of course, that can never be guaranteed. However, through the planning process and the process of creating lesson plans and the small group instruction, we hope to minimize any tech issues. But we will have staff on hand to address those, as well as our district technology department, if it's an infrastructure issue or Wi-Fi issue, that will be available.
I believe you answered this question already, but again submitted. How will labs be handled for remote high school students? And I believe that was answered. Is that correct?
Yes.
What if and this is the last portion of Ms. Valenza's email, what is the school's plan if a student, teacher, and or administrator contract the virus?
So we have a set of protocols that will be established through the CDC guidelines, the NJ DOE guidelines, and the governor's executive orders. So we will be setting up a protocol to handle any cases that come our way.
The next email, which has a couple of questions to it, from Kate Kang. There was a portion that was removed, which pertained to children, her particular children. So that email starts, can they, being the children, switch to in-class learning after the first, second, or third marking period, even if they only attend the in-class learning for the last marking period?
So to answer that, if you opt originally for the virtual model, you will have an opportunity at the end of every marking period to opt in back to school. So if you start off virtually and you see a couple of months go by for the school year, you become more and more comfortable with bringing your child back into the physical school setting, you will have that opportunity at the end of every marking period to do that. And the reverse, if you start off in school and you don't feel comfortable and want to go to a virtual model, you will have the ability to do that. But once you do that, you would not be able to switch back in again until the end of a marking period. So it will all be marking period based because to do it any other way will cause mass confusion with students coming in and out on what can conceivably be a weekly basis. So we're doing that so we can have as much consistency as we can under the current circumstances.
Next part of that email, will the virtual-only students have a dedicated teacher who's teaching in real time each day?
So we recognize that consistency is key, so our goal is to have a consistent teacher with those students. At this time, that is part of the work each of the building principals is looking at. We're looking at matching our staff to the students. Part of that will also involve the survey that Dr. Michael explained will be going out this week that will finalize which students will be on full remote. Once we have the finalized data for the students that will be on full remote, we need to go back, examine our staffing, make sure certifications are in place to match those students on full remote to the appropriate teacher that's certified in that content area. So that's going to be ongoing throughout the rest of the next few weeks.
Same author, will there be one-on-one or small group meetings for virtual learners like we had last year?
Yes, our goal is to continue through the use of Google Meets to have those one-on-one, small group, and class instruction in that virtual environment.
Same author, will virtual learners be tested in real time as if they were in school?
Assessments will look different in a virtual setting. Sometimes they will be taking a more traditional based assessment, but in a virtual setting that could be project-based, where it's a long-term project that the students are working on, and then submitting that. It could be chunks of evidence that you're submitting through Google Classroom. So assessments will look different, but through the tools that we are able to purchase and through the current technology, our goal is to have assessments and ways to measure student progress, such as the use of iReady, which can be administered whether that's in person or virtually, as well as Linkit, which is our benchmarking system. So our goal is to provide assessments and opportunities to measure student growth throughout the school year, but it does look different in a virtual setting, so that it will be part of the curriculum that's pushed out to the teachers.
Is the grading the same for in-class versus virtual learners?
So grading will be consistent, so grading across will be consistent whether that's in person or virtual.
And the last question from that same author, will curriculum and testing materials be identical for in-class versus virtual?
So once again, with assessments in a virtual setting, some of the assessments could look different depending on how they're going to produce and respond. If you're in class, you can turn that in. In a virtual setting, it may look different. It could be through the use of a Google Classroom or a Google Doc or a Google Form in which they're going to complete that assignment. So the goal is, yes, to have consistency. We want to measure the same standards, measure the same skills, but that is going to look different in terms of in-person versus full remote or in hybrid.
The next email is from Josephine Presta, P-R-E-S-T-I-A. It starts off general, gets a little more specific. What exactly will remote, I'm going to read the first paragraph, but what exactly will remote learning look like, whether full-time remote or hybrid remote? Will remote learning require a live lesson given by a teacher? What platform would be used, and any other details?
So similar to our phase 2, our teachers provided small group and individualized instruction through the use of Google Meet, as well as the use of Screencastify, where they can record themselves through a PowerPoint presentation. So that will continue as well. Obviously, in an in-person setting, we do not need to use those platforms because the students are seated in front of us. The platform that we have been using and we plan to continue to use is Google Meet. And that will be what the teachers will use for that hybrid model, as well as definitely for the fully remote students.
If full-time remote is chosen, same author, if full-time remote is chosen by the student, will instruction be of a live teacher lesson given in the classroom on that day? How will it be different from past experience?
So one thing that is part of the scheduling process right now in terms of synchronous and asynchronous instruction, that is something we're working on right now. And then we'll also be impacted by the number of students that are selecting full hybrid versus in-person. But our goal, once again, is to have consistency with the lessons, the curriculum, and the assessments, whether you're in-person, hybrid, or full remote. And once again, that use of Google Meet, which is the platform that was used during our phase 2 at the end of the year, we will continue to use.
And not part of the email, but is it fair to say that as days go by and we continue to plan, that when we come back at the question answer period on the 12th, would you have more details?
Yes, our goal is, as principals work together to finalize schedules, as we work together with personnel to finalize staffing, that will be shared out as we have that information. So next Wednesday, we will certainly have more information, and we look to share that out.
Similar to the question above, if a hybrid model is chosen by a student, will the days of remote learning be of a live teacher lesson given in the classroom on that day?
So yes, similar in terms of synchronous and asynchronous instruction, that is something that we are looking at right now, but we do not have that plan finalized. So as we have that information, we will share that out. But once again, the use of that Google Meet will allow teachers to have that connection with the students through that online platform, and as well as the use of Screencastify.
And the last part, I believe, was asked and answered. If there is a specific procedure to transition from hybrid to full-time remote, does a student need to wait for the end of the marking period? As described for transitioning from full-time remote to an in-person hybrid, I believe, Dr. Micah, you answered it at the end of the marking period.
Yes.
The next email set of questions is from Gina Haynes, Hynes. Part of this email has been redacted and will be forwarded to the appropriate union representation after the meeting. First question is, do we know what class sizes would be?
So as of today, we don't know specifically what the numbers look like. We have to wait and see what comes back from the survey as to those parents. They may be opting into the virtual component only to start the year, or maybe spend a whole year in that virtual model. However, I can say this, based on the answers to the last survey, as it stands today, we are looking at about 750 children as it stands today that are looking at the virtual as an option. So obviously that's approximately 1/4 of our student population. Depending on what happens with that number over the course of the next week as that questionnaire is filled out, that could go up, and obviously then that would lower the class size numbers. So a definitive answer tonight is not possible until we get the results back from the questionnaire that'll go out tomorrow.
And next part, will students be moving within the school to specials, or will teachers be coming to the students?
For the most part, they'll be moving to the specials. The specials teachers will be coming to them, but it'll be controlled and staggered by classroom, so we don't have an overflow in the hallway at any given time.
I believe this next question was answered in the PowerPoint, but I will read it. Will the arrival plan be? Will temperatures be taken?
So the arrivals will be staggered as well, and once we have a better idea, again, after the questionnaire about who's going to be taking their own child to school with their own transportation, or who we're going to be transporting, we will stagger those arrivals as well. Regarding the second half of that, following that questionnaire and temperature taking under the current CDC guidelines, that will be done through the document that will be filled out at home prior to the student coming to school.
And what will the dismissal procedure be?
Similar to the arrival in that they will be staggered, so we don't have a rush in the hallways all at once. So they will be staggered going out into either a bus or into a parent pickup.
How will classes like PE, chorus, art be taught?
So once again, we will continue to offer specials that may be in the afternoon when the students return home in some cases. For those students on full remote, that could also be the case. Right now, we're looking at the core subjects in the morning time, and then once again, once schedules are finalized, we can provide more details, but there's a good possibility that specials and electives will take place in the afternoon, and that could be through a virtual learning environment using tools such as Google Meet, Screencastify to engage the students in those lessons.
And how often would everything be cleaned? What would be the protocol around it?
So, well, there's going to be constant cleaning that takes place, as we touched on in the PowerPoint, and is in the document itself. Those high-touch areas are going to be constantly, custodians will be walking around the building disinfecting them, those high-touch areas, and then at the end of every day, obviously each classroom will be cleaned and disinfected. A custodian will come through and clean, and then a custodian will follow through the whole building with those electrostatic sprayers that we had discussed earlier.
And how often, along those lines, how often would bathrooms be cleaned?
It's going to be an ongoing all-day cleaning of basically everything that we stated, along with those high-touch areas. So that's going to be an ongoing, during the day, periodic cleanups of the bathrooms as well.
And will every room have sanitizer, and where else, if anywhere else, will there be sanitizing products?
Yes, so there'll be a sanitizing, hand sanitizer station in every classroom, and then spread out in the hallways throughout the building as well. Obviously at the entrance as well, so they'll be located all over the buildings.
Will in-school instruction simply be all on the computer since paper cannot be sanitized?
Our goal is not to have everything on the computer. Our goal is to have personal interactions with the students as best we can with social distancing. So I would say, no, the short answer would be it will not be completely digital if they're in person. But we will take all the necessary precautions and measures to ensure that our students and staff remain safe.
And I believe that this question has at least in part been answered already. Will classes be live streamed on remote learning days? If so, how would student privacy be protected? If not, what would be offered on those days? And I think that was a...
Yeah, so we are working together with our teachers union as well as with our principals to really finalize that synchronous and asynchronous component and what that's going to look like. More information will be shared once that's finalized.
If 100% of virtual is chosen, will there be office hours for assistants?
Yes, our goal is, regardless of the model, teachers, as we noted earlier, will be working for the full school day. So as part of that school day, teachers will be available for student support, whether that's small group, individual support, meeting with the parents as well. So that will be part of the daily schedule. So there will be ongoing support for students.
I believe this was asked and answered. Will virtual learners be given the same instruction assignments remotely as their in-person peers?
Once again, virtual is, in-person could look a little bit different. Our goal is to have consistency in the curriculum, the assessments, the standards and the skills. However, what that looks like and how that assignment is completed in a virtual versus an in-person setting will look different.
And is there a plan on how grades will be determined? Is that going to change at all?
So similar, we are looking to have grades across the board, including elementary. Grading will be consistent based on assignments, and we have grading guidelines that are established by each school at each grade level, so that will be consistent across, whether that's in-person, hybrid, or full virtual.
Will there be accountability, credibility for virtual students?
Absolutely.
And will virtual students be on a schedule?
Yes. So all students will have a schedule that they will be following on a regular basis.
Will it be required for students to meet with teachers?
Yes, that is part of the instruction. Students will be meeting with teachers, whether that is through a virtual setting such as Google Meet, or in an in-person setting that would look different. But yes, teachers will be providing ongoing support to students as they always have.
Will cameras be required to be turned on so the teacher can actually watch the child working?
So that's one of those things that we're continuing to work through. In terms of cameras, student privacy, we do take that very seriously. Also working with our board attorney to make sure that we have the proper protocols in place. As we did last year, we had a consent form that went home with letting parents know that they have a Chromebook with a camera, they have the option to cover that camera. But we will follow those same safety protocols to ensure that our students remain safe online.
I believe that these three have been asked and answered, so if they have, then you can just let me know. But how will assessments be done virtually? How will you assure that in-person and virtual learning is equitable? How will we be sure to hold the students accountable for their work?
So I think, yes, some of these were answered previously. Assessments done virtually, what that's going to look like using tools such as Google Apps for Education, Google Docs, Google Forms. A number of teachers use Google Forms for assessments and quizzes. In person, those can be completed in some cases in a traditional format, in a virtual that is going to look different. That will also include projects. Participation will be looked at through the completion of online assignments, their participation in online platforms that we're going to be using. And the equitable, as we talked about, it will be, standards and skills will be prioritized. We will need to identify the gaps when students come in. That's where our district benchmarks and our diagnostic tools will come into place. And students will be held accountable. We have reflection forms that are used by students as another measure. At the end of the week, we have ongoing assignments that they're completing with due dates. We will continue to have our real-time parent portal, so parents can log into the portal. Grades will continue to be posted, so they can see the assignments. They will be able to see the due dates. So as much of that traditional real-time parent portal, we will continue to use that as best we can in this hybrid setting. And students will remain to be held accountable for their work, and they will be receiving grades for their work as well as feedback.
The next two questions, what is the protocol if a student or teacher is showing symptoms? Will a negative test determine if a child/teacher could return to school?
So the protocols, as we said before, we're going to be following the CDC guidelines, the NJDOE, and the governor's executive orders. Someone showing symptoms, as we stated, we're creating a separate room. The symptoms are being shown. The parents will have to come and pick up the student. Obviously, with a teacher, they'll be going home on their own. Will a negative test determine if a child or teacher may return to school? Those 14-day numbers for quarantine will be in effect under those circumstances.
There are two other questions which I will ask, but I believe would fall under a board policy that we will likely be reviewing. But will a doctor's note be expected for every absence?
That's not going to change our policy right now. The doctor's notes to have an excused absence, certainly. Under the circumstances, we need to be as flexible as possible.
Procedure for a student making up work if absent, that's case-by-case basis?
Yes, and if someone is out sick, they'll have every opportunity to make up any and all work that they may have missed due to illness.
And what will attendance count this year?
Attendance will continue to count for students, and that's why we have multiple ways for students to demonstrate evidence of participation, whether that's through their online activity, through their online platform, their daily assignments, collaboration with the teacher and other students, whether that's an in-person and a virtual platform, reflection tools, homework assignments, multiple measures that teachers will use to ensure that students are engaged, and they will be held accountable as such. If they have an assignment, they must complete that assignment and submit it. However, as Dr. Mike has said, we will have flexibility. We understand that every student may not be able to submit something at the exact moment, so there will be that continued flexibility as we had in phase 2, where they can submit an assignment if that was not initially completed by the due date. So our goal is to ensure student learning, but we are aware that that does not mean that every student is going to be able to provide an assignment at an exact time given other circumstances.
Will back-to-school night and conferences be held in person? Would there be a virtual?
As it stands right now, we're looking at everything virtually due to the numbers, due to the current situation, excuse me. So that could change though if we get different directives from the state. We certainly will work to accommodate whatever we can do.
The next question, I believe, has been asked and answered. Just so people understand, I'm reading this as though people were coming up to the podium, so I can't withdraw a question unless it raises a privacy concern or isn't appropriate. So the next question, how will passing times be conducted? And I believe you addressed that.
Yep.
Will students have specials gym in person? If not, when will students and specials in gym be in person?
That will depend on the schedule. Right now, physical education, likely we need to be very careful with. So in some cases, that will be submitting a log of physical activity, and that will document their adherence and completion of the standards related to PE. In some cases, we will be front-loading health, so they will have health classes just as we do by marking period, PE and health. And in some cases, the elementary level, they'll have 1 day of PE and 1 day of health. What that's going to look like is going to be different, especially in a full virtual versus a hybrid setting, as well as ensuring safety protocols are in place, and social distancing. So our goal is to provide physical fitness to the students and adhere to the PE and health standards.
And I don't know that you know this answer because we're working on scheduling, but what, if you know, would be the in-person daily schedule be for the students?
Yes, so that is in development, and that will be shared out. That is something that the building principals and assistant principals are working on as we speak.
And this is a very encompassing question, which I think we've touched on a couple of times, a couple of different ways, but how are you, I assume that's the district, minimizing exposure for all? Is there anything that hasn't been said that?
No, but I would say we're following the CDC guidelines as they are currently, and as those guidelines change, we will adjust as well to follow the CDC guidelines.
Will there be plexiglass partitions in rooms?
The answer to that is yes. To what extent, we'll know once we start to get our numbers back as to those students that are opting in to physically being here as opposed to opting out. So that number, I don't know what that looks like specifically yet, but we've been utilizing plexiglass in our ESY program, and I don't anticipate it will continue throughout the course of the year depending on what individual situation is.
And I believe this was answered. Will there be any eating in rooms? I know there's delivery of food to rooms, but are students eating in rooms?
Well, the answer to that there could be. However, as it stands right now, for the hybrid model, students will be getting a grab-and-go lunch as they exit to go home.
Is there a policy yet for students who refuse to comply with the mask rule?
Yes, we are going through those protocols right now to have clearly established rules prior to the school day, prior to school starting on September 8th.
If students were to pretend to cough on each other and make light of COVID, how would that be treated? Would that fall under our disciplinary code?
Absolutely, and like I said, those are the specifics we're working out right now to become part of the code prior to the school year beginning. So everyone is clear on what the ramifications are for those types of actions.
The next question, I'm not sure that this district can answer, but is there a percentage of the population or number of cases / symptoms in people that would determine if schools would need to close to ensure safety and health?
As it stands right now, we're following the CDC guidelines. I can say that there's been a lot of talk about that at county meetings, and it's still being discussed, but following the CDC guidelines.
And just so that, I guess to add, as a follow-up, would that, to close schools, is that ultimately up to the governor?
As it stands right now, we're under an executive order, and that executive order is still in existence as it stands right now. We have to present a plan that has a hybrid model for an opening of school on September 8th, a complete remote model. So as of today, we're opening school on September 8th, and we are still waiting for more word from the governor.
If the building is excessively hot, will school be closed for the day, given that masks must be worn? And I believe we have air conditioning now.
Thankfully, the board has worked extremely hard over the last 4 years to revamp our HVA system, getting rid of all of our old heating systems and replacing them with heating and air conditioning. So we have air-conditioned rooms throughout the district.
This is from M. Cregan, C-R-E-G-I-N. Will staff and/or students require COVID testing prior to in-person learning?
As it stands right now, following the CDC guidelines, that is not a requirement.
And you answered the second part of that email was whether or not there will be air conditioning. The answer, I believe you just said, was yes.
Yes.
The next set of questions is from an email from Jennifer Simone. If we opt to send our child and after a week they cannot do it with masks, can we go virtual?
And I touched upon that before. The answer to that is an absolute yes. However, I would say if you make that decision and then you want to then later down the line want to bring your child back into the physical school, that could only be done at in between a marking period. So you'd have to wait until whatever marking period you were in ends, and then you would have the ability to come back to the physical space itself.
And I believe that these two follow-ups that have been asked and answered. Will the virtual learning, whether 3 days a week or all week, be scheduled classes throughout the day? And will the half-days be followed by virtual learning in the afternoons?
Yes, to both. Once again, it is a full day for teachers and it is a full day for students. Although the in-person, they are following the minimum school day, the expectation is once they return home, they will have continued instruction with their teachers.
The next set of questions is from an email submitted by Christina Reitman, R-E-I-T-M-A-N-N. If we opt for full-time virtual learning, will our children actually be taught virtually by a teacher via Google Meets all 5 days, or will they receive assignments on Google to complete while in school students receive face-to-face instruction, which I think you touched on?
Yes, there will be a combination of both. There will be assignments, there'll be independent assignments that they will complete, there'll be independent projects, there'll be online platforms and instructional pathways that they will complete that the teachers will gather data from, as well as the use of Google Meets for those small group, whole group, and individual instruction. And testing, we talked about that. Testing will be continued. We will continue to utilize our benchmark assessments, link it. We have iReady, as well as our traditional teacher-based assessments. However, what those assessments are going to look like will be different, but we will utilize our interactive platforms to make those assignments and that collaboration as interactive as possible, depending if the student's in full virtual, hybrid, or in person.
The next set of questions comes from an email from Christine. Baptiste. Last name is Manasse hyphen Baptiste, Baptiste. She would like to know, based on the proposed school schedule with Monday, Tuesday, half day, A to K, how holidays are being factored in, since a lot of the school holidays tend to fall on Monday or Tuesday. Will the, I feel like I'm back at MAMS, I'm trying to figure out A days versus B days. Will the first group still be entitled to the same amount of days, hours of in-person learning?
The answer to that is yes, and I'll have to go through to see what the equity is in that, and we'll adjust accordingly.
For half-day sessions, will there still be Y time as a wraparound program for?
The long and short of that is yes. However, that's also going to be based off of numbers and availability of how many students are requesting it. So at our Q&A session next week, we will have someone from the Y available to take questions. However, if you want to present the questions through the district prior to next Wednesday, we will forward any questions to Y time. However, we have met with Y time quite a few times in the last couple of weeks, and they're currently looking for more space so they can accommodate as many people as possible based on the current guidelines that we're working under right now.
The next question is why the district is proposing only 2 half-days of in-person learning versus 5 days worth of...
Right. So that was hashed out through the committee work, and I will say space is an issue, so, and the numbers of students coming in is an issue. So if you look, there are some districts that are bringing students in, and they're going with 5 days. However, those are a lot of the K to 8 districts that have very, very small class sizes to begin with. Some of those classes may only have 8 or 9 students in a room. So, you know, a lot of the factoring in that is the size of the district itself and its ability to carry out under the current parameters that have been set by the state.
I think it's the last question on this email. Normally the school likes to benchmark where students are. How will that be handled to ensure that students are assessed actually?
So I know there's been a lot of questions about assessment. So our focus in the beginning of the school year really is going to be connecting with students. So we understand their assessments have a place, but we want to make sure that students are integrated back into the school system. They make connections with their teachers. They make connections with their peers, whether that's in an in-person or a virtual setting. So that is going to be a focus in the beginning of the school year, connecting with students through those classroom meetings, those morning meetings, you know, engaging students in time for reflection. I just want to put that out there first. But assessments, of course, have a place. We will be continuing to assess students. We need to diagnose what the gaps are from the previous year, and then we need to figure out where they need to go for the current year. So that's where the use of our benchmark assessments and the use of such as Linkit, as well as adaptive assessments such as iReady, will come into play so we can really identify and diagnose students. These platforms at the elementary level also come with personalized pathways. So once a student completes a diagnostic, they will be able to complete independent assignments. The teacher will be able to collect that data, look at the standards and the skills, and then use that data to drive their small group instruction to really meet students where they are at.
And